Welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. I hope you're all doing well. I thought I would make a video sharing some thoughts that may be helpful or useful. It's kind of like an energy update and some intuitive thoughts about this year. Many of you know that our individual point of view really determines how we see, experience, and interpret things. And that inner point of view affects our relationship to ourselves, to objects, to others, and our world. There is this new order being established within our hearts and within our minds of all people. And this has been happening. It's really the true order of things. The true order of things has always been a universal supreme good based on a principle of love. So only our relation to this true order of things has seemed to change. When we rise from within our own selves, we see life differently because of the life that's becoming known from within. And this life is like a divine image or a divine pattern. And this pattern contains all aspects of creation. It kind of unifies things in our awareness. And it's this image and this pattern that comes forth from within and allows us to see life more fully, more clearly, rather than from a divided or dualistic state. It's the supreme good of us that is completely united with all creation in a harmonious way. It's the divine image that's hidden when we see flaws or littleness. And it's this divine image or divine pattern that we need to remember so we can really see the truth of others rather than holding on to the changing opinions, the flaws, and the ideas. Kind of like how the weather changes or the seasons change. Our inner state can be stable regardless of what's going on with the weather or how the weather may be changing moment to moment. So we all know that our experience can shape our perspective quite a bit, and as our perspective changes, we interpret our world differently. How we interpret our world changes too. So our point of view is kind of constantly changing and readjusting. So it's not one another that we're overcoming, it's the conditioning that veils the principles that unite us that we overcome. And sometimes people will only believe that they're free, loved, and worthy if they see, hear, or experience something that represents that to them from their own unique point of view. So some need to hear, see, and experience things in a certain way in order to really believe, accept, and know that they have a purpose, that they really are liberated and free, that they're worthy and loved. And that's kind of what we're all doing for one another in different ways. Every person does play their part in helping to give more love and joy to others. How some people need to see or hear of freedom as a reality right now in terms of like the symbols of the world, how they're viewing their world and their experience may be very different as to how others may need to see it or experience it. So we each learn in our own unique way. Yet all that have recognized this principle of unity and have this kind of established in their consciousness are not working this side against that side, regardless of how it may look at times. There's a universal purpose, and all are working for the good in their own unique way. So some people are guiding people from one point of view, and other people are guiding other people from another point of view, and it's kind of trying to bring everyone in to this universal idea or this true order of things, which is supreme good. So when this is really established within us, in our heart, we realize that we cannot mentally take from any other and not take from ourselves at the same time. So we cannot have freedom while mentally affirming the opposite for others, or affirming the opposite as an existence, as a truth or a reality. Even if it has been an experience and a reality, it's a relative changing experience, kind of like the surface or the weather, and it's that supreme good that's established within us, that principle that's established within us, that gives us that stability and allows us to expand and rise into greater good. So the spirit is a unity, it's a whole, it's complete. It's a complete state. So when we think it's these ones against those ones, we're not really seeing from the unity of the spirit or the life that's within us, that principle of life within us, but are seeing more from the adverse conditioning, which can be kind of connected to sensory impressions, just different things that have conditioned our consciousness. So we can't hold on to the effects of the past and give the past effects authority as if they are causes of their own in the present. So we have to learn to determine the difference or see the difference. And that means that within ourselves we learn to no longer mentally affirm division or blame and affirm unity at the same time, because one will overpower the other. So we kind of experience observing this process taking place within us, shifting from one state of being into a different state of being, or one perspective into another perspective. In every moment we have a choice within ourselves as to what we're aligning with. And the more we're consciously practicing realizing supreme good, the easier it becomes to align our thoughts, our words, and our actions with that idea of supreme good. And that idea becomes a foundation or a point where all other ideas flow from. And because it's supreme good, then all that flows from that point or that foundation will also be supreme good. And the reason I felt kind of guided to talk about this is because I noticed that there's a lot of interest in like self-development and manifesting, law of attraction, these kind of things. And I feel like in time people will realize that in order to experience the reality that we wish, we have to establish this principle of unity and universal good, because that's where our connection is. That connection dissolves the barriers to all good and all wisdom. We become all of space and then learn to develop our individuality from a universal connection. We bring that universal connection in expression through us at an individual level in a unique way. But that universal connection is all tied to one purpose, one direction, one mind, one power, one intelligence, just acting through various channels, various people, speaking in different ways. And that connection can only be strengthened by our recognition of it and by our daily practice. So when we consciously choose to think a more loving thought, to speak a loving word, or act in a more loving way, or thinking in ways and speaking in ways that are benefiting us, that are aligning with our development, then we're directing our energies in a productive way and we're giving to the world. So even if it's not out there physically in display, if it's something that you're doing within yourself, like prayer or just having a good intention, being sincere with your intentions. This is how we give to the world, and this is how we align more with that universal good, that supreme good. And it's almost like this universal mind or intelligence begins to take like a conscious recognition of us at an individual level. It begins to recognize almost like that recognition that we're developing within our own selves. So it's a mutual experience. And I can talk about the current energy, and I will. I can tell you that the energy is changing, because it always is. Although how you experience that really depends on where you are within that change within yourself. We can identify with the things that seem to change and give them meaning. And that meaning can change when our point of view changes. So if we try to see beyond the things that change and remain, regardless of our point of view, it can create more stability in our mind. We can look at principles that are universal and the concepts and qualities that unify, and that's where we can find more stability and more growth. So we kind of reach this point of equilibrium within ourselves when we're choosing to consciously direct our energies in a more healthy way or a more useful way. And that's where our connection to everything is, from within ourselves. So it's like learning to consciously reestablish or consciously recollect those principles and concepts that we all have in common. And when we do this at an individual level, we're aligning ourselves with universal goals, the supreme good for all. And as a result, we will consciously choose the more loving thought, the more loving word or action, and it becomes a natural result. And when changes appear, and when we see change in the world, we can more easily align ourselves with the solution because we're consciously choosing to think, speak, and act in alignment with that universal good because of that connection that's established within us. So the difference in recognizing our unity and supreme good as a truth and knowing of universal laws such as law of attraction, manifestation, is in recognizing that our unity that we establish within is a permanent connection to the source of all things. And it's from that unity or that connection that we act for the supreme good more sincerely. And in knowing of universal laws, or like law of attraction and manifestation in these different techniques to apply, it's a step in that direction of aligning with supreme good. And as we align with that supreme good, it's a higher divine intelligence that begins to kind of guide us and take over rather than the personal self needing to figure everything out. So we kind of become more mentally free and guided by divine inspiration. We become one with the intelligence of all things, the intelligence of all people, and we quickly see how our thoughts, words, and reactions can act upon things. So when we align with this supreme good, this idea established within us, this idea of unity, and really contemplate on that consistently and develop that connection, that awareness, we automatically start acting in accordance with it because it starts to act through us at an individual level. So it's that active principle that's something that we develop and align from within. It's our constant recognition and observance of this divine truth. And that's what really creates change. Yes, our thoughts, our words, our actions have an effect, but our level of effect and power is in our level of connection. And our level of connection is in our capacity to love, and it's in our sincerity. And that connection is one of unity. It's one with the supreme good for all. So when we're aligned with that idea of unity and the supreme good for all, we're connected with all other individualities. We're connected with all intelligences and energies that are associated with that one direction or that one mind. So I believe that there's a wonderful change that more people will begin to notice and experience over time. I talked about this in a recent Patreon video speaking about the year 2023, and to me it symbolizes a focus on spiritual unity and that unity being reflected in physical ways. It's kind of like you experience a universal language more clearly. You begin to see, hear, feel, and experience the interconnectedness in a more clear way. And this creates an increase in faith, because faith is the substance that fuels what we think. It's the substance that fuels our beliefs. So when we have a lot of faith, we have a lot of substance to create with. It's a universal substance. And universal substance radiates in all directions. So it's like becoming all of space and awareness. And all the elements are already united and arranged to obey divine order, but it's through our conscious experience that we increase our faith or increase our connection to this universal substance in our individual awareness to consciously direct it for a purpose. And in time, people will begin to see this more and more within themselves, that they're building this substance within, they're building this connection within, and that this connection is of a higher power that's connected to the supreme good or a principle of unity, one that's based on love. And in time, people will begin to see that divine image or divine pattern within themselves. They'll begin to see one another more clearly, more purely, as their divine selves, like gods and goddesses, all extending from one power, one intelligence, acting with more love and more compassion. So I feel like there'll be a sense of inner peace, freedom, creativity, and divine inspiration that naturally is a result of this change that's taking place. So I hope this was helpful. I may do some more messages like this. You guys can let me know if this was helpful. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you soon.